But if you get that in writing and give it to Connie, we'll get it to the lawyers and let your concerns. Yes, Jim.
About a year ago, it seems to me, something like that, I asked about this question of road agreement versus road ordinance. And I believe at that time, Mark was very emphatic that we should have an ordinance because that has the force of law. And an agreement we can only enforce by suing them. And I wonder why we shifted away from the force of law.
Well, because the lawyer firm that we are dealing with now has a lot of experience, and this is what they recommend.
I think it's bad. As a citizen of Franklin, I would feel protected by a law, not by an agreement that we will have to go to court and pay them.
You know, the good part is, Gene, that the county has not got a law.
But that's not good either.
Oh, well, I don't know, maybe it is. You know, there's always two sides to everything, which we know. I'm just going by this recommendation from a good, respected firm that's what they're going for, and that's the town board has decided to let them do our bargaining. Okay, next. Jason.
Jason. I'm submitting to you a copy of the resolution passed by the town board of Stephentown, New York on April 20th of this year, about 2 weeks ago. I hope it will serve as a template for the resolutions, ordinances, and other protections you will pass in order to maintain the rural character of life in Franklin. As I understand, there are already laws in place which have been broken by the pipeline companies. On the more formal end, it seems agricultural district laws requiring notice of intent to convert ag district farmland to non-agricultural uses have not been obeyed. On the less formal, more down-to-earth, right here in your face end, littering has been observed as garbage left strewn about by Constitution pipeline workers. These laws, and the new ones I believe will be created, must be enforced if Franklin is to be something greater than a bulldozed, chopped down, water-drained utility corridor for these companies with a long history of being bad neighbors and a track record of poor safety practices. I'm encouraged by the board's action of drafting and considering Local Law Number 1 of 2015. I'm confident you will continue to listen to the wishes of the people of Franklin and lead this town into the future as envisioned in Franklin's comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Before I forget it, Brian, you said you had your comments printed, so I can put them with the other comment, and that way I won't forget about it and put it back. You might not forget it, but I might.
Oh, I'm more likely to forget the new law, believe me.
That way I'll put it together and, it'll be for us to.
Let's see. There are the comments, and here's my work through of the ordinance with the mistakes in it.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Mike, you had your hand up about the same time as Jason, so. And thank you, Jason.
My back to royalty. The oil and gas in mineral industry is based on exploration, distribution of the discovery. They start with prospecting to land owners, public land, government land, and with promises of royalty. They are governed by legislations and guaranteed profits through billing. At this point, they become public utilities, government regulated, Wall Street driven. This journey creates wealth for shareholders, government, and landowners. This also creates mistrust, scandal for communities, consumers, as history has shown. Communities that bear the pipeline drilling receive no lasting benefits. The subject property as well as neighboring lands are devalued. through the years. One way to address this diverse relationship between the gas companies and the communities would be to negotiate a contract in which these communities would receive an ongoing royalty check for the use of the land, and as more homes convert to natural gas, this issue would be addressed now to avoid misunderstanding between gas companies and communities in the future. A non-kind agreement would eliminate and foresaw any potential lawsuits and disagreements, and would go a long way to rebuilding trust between the two sides. The funding provided through royalties would fund social programs that would benefit individual communities, for example, senior housing. I have many ideas, I'd love to share these with you. Royalties would create an organic growth within the community and the challenges of the community in the future. What seems to happen is that in the beginning they're there when they're looking to, when they came to us in '88 and in '90s, you know, here's a royalty check with the landowners. Now that they've gotten it in Pennsylvania and they didn't do it in New York, you know, now we're doing, you know, a pipeline, and they've eliminated the landowners, and it's just the shareholders and the utilities that pay the profit, yet they still need the landowners, and they seem to cut us out. You know, if we have to get stuck with this, why can't we, you know, why have they cut out these communities? Because I believe the government gets some sort of cut out of this, it never gets back to the communities, and it probably would only be pennies on the dollar in the billing. Since they regulate the billing, why couldn't they put some sort of surcharge that we would get, you know, money back, some money back, and relief to people that the value of their land has been devalued, especially the ones that get it through their, and the next door neighbors. You see that in all the communities that have these, that the less valued properties got the pipelines through, you know, as the towns develop. And this would be one way of stopping it. And that the compression station, that could be another royalty, as you said last time, that, you know, that compression station is gonna double their capacity. And that's a separate company compared to, you know, when Pennsylvania farmers sell their gas to the utilities, it's sold at that Pennsylvania price, and then when it goes through that pipeline, it's sold at the Boston price or the Albany price, which is higher. We can't, you know, get a little bit of the action.
Right,
You know, how come we're cut out of it?
right. Now, you said royalties?
Well, it's an ongoing royalty.
Right.
You know, they can go by what goes through that power line,
Right.
pipeline. The same thing, when if they're gonna put another power line in, these landowners, you know, are gonna get, you know, they're.
We can ask, we can ask our lawyers, see if they're doing any, you know.
Well, a lawsuit
what-
would stop them for a while. The last thing they want
Mhm,
is their project stopped.
right,
You know, the last
Well, we
thing they
can-
want to hear is a 2-year delay.
right,
You
right.
know, you got a legitimate lawsuit against them for some reason, if this law company wants to make a name for themselves.
Right.
They'll definitely make a name for themselves. That would stop their project, you know, they'll probably run away from us with the compression station and go somewhere else.
That would make a name for them and break us.
Well, they gotta do it cheap.
Yeah.
They want, you know,
Right.
if you're giving
right.
them the opportunity to make a name.
Okay, Mike, well, I'll make note that, you know, is there any such thing as a royalty or a, I always thought a tariff would be a great thing, so much on a gallon or a
Well, I
cubic
think
foot.
that's the same thing. It's
Right,
the
same thing, but I've never heard of anybody doing it or being allowed
Yeah,
to
but
do
they
it.
cut everybody out. They keep
Right.
cutting it out, and all it goes
Okay.
down is Wall Street gets a ton of money out of this.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, next. Don't be shy, Donnie.
I'm not sure. Just tired. Thank you for the privilege of the floor. I do have a prepared statement, and I have a copy of it I'll pass on to Ken.
Thank you.
I want to point out again, as I pointed out before, that all the residents and landowners in the town of Franklin, we do have a lot of things in common. You know, we really are on the same side. We like the quality of life here. Many people have moved here just because of that reason. We enjoy the uncongested roads, we drink the same water, we breathe the same air. And we're all gonna share the same common bad effects that can come with pipelines and compressor stations. Road damage, travel destruction, large trucks, congestion, health issues from the emissions that we know come from compressor stations, reduced property values for those not just that are affected, but those nearby, because it's gonna affect all of us if Franklin becomes a less desirable place to live. Who is the market that's coming? It's second homeowners and retiring people, and there are other places in the country they could go. We all have a common enemy, that's those large energy companies. They've been granted exemption from federal air and water quality laws. They've been granted eminent domain to take private property for their shareholders' profit. They're willing to permanently damage our air and our environment for short-term company gain. They are committed to maximizing their profits by transporting Pennsylvania's natural gas to Canada, either out to the Maritimes or up to the St. Lawrence Sea where it can be exported as compressed natural gas. Meanwhile, New York State, Delaware County, and Franklin, we get a pittance of that value that's going through there, as was just mentioned. At previous board meetings, I have asked the board for some specific actions, and I apologize for missing the last one. I was out of town, and maybe some of these have happened. I'd like to review and ask respectfully for an update. We asked about the resolution opposing divisible load permits for the town of Franklin. I know the county has done that. Has the town proceeded with any kind of activity to, do this divisible load permit?
Well, I've called the attorney and said that's one of our concerns, having a road use agreement.
Appreciate that. Road use ordinance, I just heard that, I was gonna mention that too. I gave a sample road use ordinance to the board probably 3 months ago now, and it had specific defined criteria for what is a high-intensity road use, and it had specific exemptions for farming, gravel mining, timber harvesting, residential construction activities, and it required an appropriate bond for people that do high road use, and that was defined as over 500 roads into an area, which probably is what we're gonna see when the pipeline comes through, that our roads will see more than 500. And so I just wondered, I guess you've already said it's being looked at, and the attorney is talking about an option to do an ordinance, or agreement instead of an ordinance.
That's what they're
I'm
looking at,
also in the
yes.
club in saying that I'm not exactly sure that an agreement can protect us, and I think you need both. At a previous board meeting, a proposal from Delta Engineering was presented to the board. Delta would be contracted to document existing condition of roads that would be impacted. At a more recent board meeting, it was announced that maybe Superintendent of Highways, Mark, would actually conduct a survey and do more of that pre-construction stuff and condition documenting himself. First, I respectfully request that you consider Delta Engineering be contracted for existing road documentation. Delta Engineering would be an independent, unbiased third-party opinion on the condition of the roads, and probably would be more binding in a court of law than being unbiased. The past track record of gas companies for recurring roads following construction has shown to be woefully inaccurate in some towns. And other towns have had to take pipeline companies to court for unrepaired roads. The main thing is Franklin taxpayers should not have to pay for road repairs. Delta requires a road use ordinance and a road use agreement. You guys have seen that, it was presented to you, and I've got a copy of it. Thus, I would further request that, the fees for Delta's contract be included in the road use agreement. The only reason that we need to study our roads is because of the pipeline company's activities. They should be the ones to fund it. And I also just respectfully say that Mark probably has a lot of things to do. Monitoring our roads might not be the best use of his time. If Cabot Williams cannot be forced to pay Delta Engineering's fee, then I still feel we should contract with them. $8,500 to $9,000 is what was proposed, as I recall back, when they first presented. That is a lot of money. But we have known other towns that have had to pay thousands, hundreds of thousands. I mean, they had $1 million damage and got $250,000 in one Pennsylvania town. Had to go back to court and got a little mother kittens. We don't need that. Second thing I'd like to ask the board is, at the last meeting, I understand you passed a conditional resolution opposing the compressor stations in the town of Franklin until more information could be gathered.
Right.
That is true? I thank you for that.
Environmental information, yes.
Okay, I thank you for that. The Madison County Department of Health comments to FERC was presented by Eugene Marner back at the December board meeting. It was an extensive, unbiased, documented report by multiple health professionals, government commissioners, and independent university studies. Has the board had an opportunity to at least review or discuss that?
We have reviewed it. I gave it to Chris Gibson's office. He sent it on to the State Department of Health. I gave it to the Health Department at the county level, and they've been too busy to have time to look at it. And getting back to the road use agreement, in this agreement with that the lawyer is working on is hopefully, and this probably shouldn't be printed, that, you know, we're gonna get expenses for engineers, you know, that they're gonna cover the engineering costs for the town and possibly lawyer fees.
So, and that's for studies before to document the.
Well, that's for, right, whatever expenses that we incur, you know, whether it be Delta or whatever, would be covered in this road use agreement. That's what they're presenting, that's what they're trying to do. And whether they succeed or not, you know, maybe they might get the lawyer fees covered, they might get the engineering fees covered. Would hope, with any luck, we get them both covered, so we can do more in depth without breaking the town.
Well, that's just it. I think there's no reason for us.
There's no reason for them not to do that,
Yeah,
I
there's no
agree.
reason for us to pay a nickel. I agree.
But that's where
Yeah.
you're hopefully getting a road use agreement worked out that is good for the town, and the company can live with it. The main thing is good for the town.
Back to the Madison County Board, you have reviewed that. Have there been other studies, other documents? Have you had a chance to review some other things as well? Because that was just one. It was vast, but it was one.
I think I did go find another one, I can't tell you what it is. I've got,
Okay. I mean,
you know,
but-
feelers out there for people. I said, I want information on the environmental part.
I mean, you're looking.
Because
I appreciate
we did go to, my wife and I went to Wellsboro for the 30,000 horsepower compressor. And it was like a lawnmower mowing lawn 3-4 yards down or whatever in the distance. Up on, it was on top of a hill. We drove back down to the main road to, what's the name of the road? I can't remember now. And there was a lady, well, they had a house across the way, the new house up here, roadway, compressor station. And so she was coming down the driveway wheeling a carriage with a really young child in it. And we waited for her to get down. I thought she'd come down for a mail, but she headed on down the road. We visited, and she said she's lived there since '03. They built a house with the old compressor station there. Said the old one had issues. They had some blowdowns, they had some noise, they had this. But the new one, which has been in operation since last fall, she's had no issues at all with it. You know, it's been quiet. We spoke to 3 other people, 2 renters just down the road a little bit further. They had issues on fracking, on water. They had no issues with the compressor station.
Well, I think that's exactly shows how public opinion can sway, because the early compressors were out in the open, they weren't even in buildings. Now they're putting them in business and they're making them quiet. Now we need to attack the emissions part of it, and that stuff they're blasting up into the air. I mean, if you can take and force a coal burning energy plant, to buy all kinds of scrubbers and clean up
Right,
their stack. They should be able to clean up these stacks.
Well, I think
Not-
that's what I've been saying right along
Exactly.
on the emissions, okay?
I agree.
So we'll move on now, Don, I think we've,
Well, just one last
Okay,
comment. You
one
talked
last
too
thing.
much. Got 30 seconds of mine, you didn't. That's not fair. Anyway.
I'm gonna bring a timer next month.
In terms of the unconditional resolution, I thank you very much for what you've done. But basically, in my opinion, if the town of Franklin wants to stand firmly opposed to compressor stations, I believe that then we could maybe prevent being constructed in Franklin. Sydney is benefiting by getting the natural gas for Amphenol, for instance, and possibly other businesses later. So in my opinion, I'd be very happy to let them benefit from having a compressor station. But that's only gonna happen if we can stand firm. So if the town board truly wants to protect the residents of Franklin from the emissions resulting from a compressor station, I now request that the town board adopt a resolution of unconditional opposition to a compressor station in the town of Franklin based on the knowledge that we now know. And I thank you for the privilege of the floor.
Thank you, Don. Okay, anybody else?
Almost kicked the bucket.
Thank you.
I'll go around it so you can. Yeah. Thank you.
Don't take a chance.
No.
Okay. Next. Yes,
I have a few concerns. I went to the open house that was held in Sydney by the second pipeline, and I asked how far apart are these pipes going to be positioned, and he said most of the way about 50 feet. And I said, so when one blows, they're both going to go? And he just stood there and shook his head like, yeah. So whatever the effects of one pipe going, they're both going to go. And I said to him, I said, you know, we're really not happy to find we're living in what's called the sacrifice zone, which can be as much as 1,400 or 1,500 feet in any direction from one pipeline bursting. And this guy, I couldn't believe, he told me, he goes, well, I'm from further east and we call it the incineration zone. And I just stood there, I couldn't believe what I'm hearing. And my feeling is.
now was that one of the Kinder Morgan people, or was that one of the Tennessee people?
I think Kinder Morgan. He had the blue shirt on.
Well, there was two sets of blue shirts down there. Some Kinder Morgan, which was the protesters, and some Tennessee. If I had a Tennessee shirt on, it was actually the Tennessee Pipeline.
I think it was Kinder Morgan.
Well, Kinder Morgan were the protesters.
They were the protesters that had the same color blue shirts on and Kinder Morgan tags that were spelled differently.
Behind the table giving information.
Some of them were behind
They
tables.
were around, they were all over the place, and that, I mean, I think Pete was there. He knows that happened, right, Pete? Kinder Morgan, Pete, the ones that had Kinder Morgan on them were the protesters.
They had it spelled differently.
like that.
I didn't either, but if it said, but if it said Kinder Morgan, it wasn't the Tennessee
But it's
Pipeline
K-
people.
The fake people were KY instead of KI.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
It was
but I
obvious.
didn't notice a Y, I'm sorry,
No.
but I noticed
They were mostly.
Kinder Morgan, and I said,
I
they're
think they
not
were
Kinder
Well, I
mostly
Morgan.
didn't think the
Pipeline
pipeline
Corporation
people would let him
people that weren't-
behind the table where they were.
Was it a guy or a woman?
It was a man.
And then there was only women there that I
He
know.
was
Yeah, there was only a woman with the other.
Yeah.
There were
Yeah,
guys
Yeah,
in
you
there.
guys love that.
Okay,
Okay, I
okay, okay, yes, go ahead.
Two other quick things.
Yes.
I am very afraid if we get the compressor station, Franklin has a gem of a school here, but their population has gone down and they're really trying to keep enough children here. What young family is gonna wanna bring kids to this town? They're gonna go to somewhere else, which also affects anybody else in town that wants to sell because they have to move somewhere else. And another thing I just read about these lines when they clear and they compact after they put the pipe in, they said before the ground is disturbed, it's about 77% compacted and water will percolate, plants will grow. They said after this compaction, they're about 98%, which they said is about the equivalent of concrete. Water won't percolate through the soil, plants won't grow, well, they don't want the plants to grow, but the water won't get into the water table. So now you're talking two strips, probably 100-foot wide each. But they said there's better ways to do it where you can have all as narrow as a 20-foot area of compaction. But it takes a little more time, and now that the gas prices are so low, it says watch out because they're gonna cut every corner they can.
Well, I would think the compaction should be around the pipeline, but I don't know. Not the full 50 feet. Okay,
That's- yeah.
that's it, okay. Yes, Jane?